Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, Kyle.
Hi. Hi, Deborah.
Ciao.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Excellent to see you, Mary and Susan and Deborah.
Ciao, Susanna.
Good morning. Ciao, Julia.
Hey,
Good morning, everybody.
Susan, we need Zooms to see each other, even though we're in New York.
I know. I don't leave the house, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Too hot.
I was
Deborah,
going to
great to see you.
yeah.
And you, yeah. Starting
What?
to leave the house more now.
Yes.
Ah, Deborah, you're in Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
Yes, it looks like you brought up the right background there, Deborah.
Yes, you know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to decide if this is an escarpment, you know, it's a hogback, right? I'm trying to decide which one. I was rereading the article I wrote about the formation of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Hills, and I would need the expert to tell me.
Yeah, it does look like a hogback to me. Is that the
Yeah.
case? Is
Yeah,
it?
they all are, but it's just how deeply affected
Yeah.
they've been by that glacial erosion. At any rate, I'm trying to get in the mindset of our talk this morning.
Yes.
It looks
very
good.
I love it.
Books are beautiful. Wow.
I know they are incredible.
I don't
I
think
haven't read it all yet,
Yes, I know.
but it's fabulous. I mean, I was just reading all the soil chapters, and they're compelling.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a prerequisite with such a short period of time in which to read. But a
I
great,
did my best.
yes, a great reference for the library for the future.
Yeah.
Yes, very
Oh,
good.
the sensory stuff is amazing too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Really amazing, very helpful.
Mm.
You know, when trying to differentiate, really good.
Wonderful. Well, great. It looks like we're all here and within 3 minutes of start time. So wonderful. All right. Well, I am going to go ahead and officially welcome everybody. I'm Kimberly Charles from Charles Communications Associates based in San Francisco, and honored to be working with the Consorzio of Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore, DOCG, since 2018. Over the course of our time working together, we have put together a number of master class programs. And this particular opportunity today is a small group, a wonderful group. We consider this audience to really be among the best minds in wine writing and wine research and education in the US. And so we're very excited to have you meet our speakers today and interact with them. So we would love to hear as much of your thoughts and observations as we go through this. It is being recorded. We have 2 people who could not make the time frame and who will be participating remotely later. So our speakers today are in your very, let's say, juicy attendees folder with lots of good reference material. So if anything, you might need isn't there, we are going to be putting some of the presentation material into the folders later. And I, by the way, did not get a chance to introduce Zach, who's also here from South Africa, who's part of my team. And he's been, yes, it's wonderful to have him here. And he's been working with me closely for 3 years and maybe going on 4 now, Zach. So we have a chance to do a multi-time zone collaboration, which is great. So thank you, Zach, for all your help. Today, we'll be hearing from Professor Diego Tomasi, who is the researcher with CREAVE, which is the Research Center for Viticulture and Enology. And he has been focused on the relationship between the vine and its environment for quite a long time. He actually headed up the center from 2015 to 2017. And most notably, of course, too, in addition to all the scientific publications he's put together in the 13 books on zoning and varietal topics, he and Federica Gaiotti, who is here as well, co-authored the Terroirs book that you received. So we're really thrilled to be able to have this comprehensive and, in my estimation, as a student with the WSET. I don't think I've ever seen, and please, Mary, you are more current than I, but I don't think I've ever seen an appellation really dedicate such a scholarly work to the region. And I'm excited, and I hope it becomes a paragon for the remainder of the wine world.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Federica will be leading our tastings today as we move through these zones. She is also, of course, a researcher in the field of vine enology and physiology, and has put together a number of compelling conferences, and is a lead researcher as well at the center. And then we also have Andrea Miotto, who is an enologist and also a member of the confrérie, is the way I like to think of it, since I'm more French oriented. I had the confraternita. How would we say it in Italian?
Confraternita.
Yes, thank you. Confraternita, yes. Valdobbiadene. And so he is very close with the growers. He's based in Valdobbiadene, and he is, they collaborate. To me, they remind me a lot of the Oregon wine growers in terms of sharing research, sharing resources, sharing anecdotes, multi-generational institutional memory being imparted as the region moves forward. So Andrea is our enologist guest today, and he's spent a fair amount of time beyond Italy, in New Zealand and Argentina and California. So his observations are informed as well by a fair amount of travel and exposure. And last but not least, Giulia Pusini, who had joined the consortio in 2009 when it received its DOCG status. So she had excellent timing. And that was a great honor for the region and a recognition. And she is in charge of the international promotion of the region, working with all the export markets, which are quite important. And is one of the busiest people I know, but always kind and always patient and always enthusiastic. And so her 12 years of work have really enriched our experience and helped us translate a lot about the region to the stakeholders in the United States that we hold quite dear. And so Giulia, it's a total pleasure to work with you. I love that also that I was not aware, and I don't know if we have an equivalent, but you've got a master's degree in technique and communication of sparkling wines from the University of Padua. So what a wonderful focus area. And also her sommelier certificate. Last year, she moved to the region during COVID. Was it just before COVID you went to Valdobbiadene, Giulia?
Yes, exactly. Before
Yes.
2019.
So she moved from Conegliano west. So yes, so she will be setting up our conference. I will hand it over to her. And as I said, please pop questions in the chat throughout. And when we get to the wines, I would love some interactive discussion. Please feel free to be as participatory as you care to. So thank you and welcome.
So good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see some familiar and new faces. And on behalf of the consortium, thank you to all of you for joining this virtual tasting, a focus on an important theme, the theme of the terroirs of Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
Sorry, Giulia. Why virtual? They don't. They have the wine there.
Yes,
no,
it's true.
It's
not so virtual. It's not so real.
Okay, sorry.
And I was saying that the theme of the terroirs of Conegliano Valdobbiadene, it's an important theme that was investigated through the work of the Professor Diego Tomasi and Federica Gagliotti in the last years, and brought to the publication of this beautiful book that you receive, The Terroirs of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Before going deep in the exploration on the soils, on this mosaic of soils of our appellation, I would like just to focus the attention on few key points regarding our appellation. Also with Andrea Miotto. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so maybe many of you knows our appellation, but just to remind you a few important elements. We have to say that our appellation, Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore di OCG, represents the historic production area of the world of Prosecco, a word that comprehends 3 different appellations. So on the base of this quality pyramid, we have the Prosecco DOC area. Then going up, we find Asolo Prosecco DOCG. And then the second DOCG is ours, so Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. Inside our appellation, we find 2 selections. One is Cartizze. Cartizze is a subzone of just 108 hectares that was always identified as the best spot for growing grapes, considered as the Grand Cru, we could say, of our appellation, situated in the municipality of Valdobbiadene. The other selection that we have in our appellation are the Rive. Rive is a local term used to indicate the best vineyards with the best exposure. And there are 43 different hamlets and villages in the area where the grapes can be sourced for producing this typology Rive that represents the true ambassador of the different terroirs of the appellation. And we are going to taste different examples of Rive and Cartizze wine during the tasting of today. The area of Conegliano Valdobbiadene is also characterized by a strong community of producers. We represent more than 3,000 families of wine growers, 192 sparkling wine companies. It is an area where there is a nice specialization in the production of this wine and also a deep tradition. We represent the 15% of the world of Prosecco in terms of quantity of bottles produced. In 2020, we produced 92 million bottles. The 97% is represented by the typology sparkling, but we can produce also, small quantities of Frizzante and Tranquillo. Cartizze is produced in a small quantity, given the fact that the subzone is quite small, and the production instead of Rive, the typology Rive, it is growing in the last year. It was introduced in 2009, and we have seen that the production is growing year by year. Our wine is a wine that is very linked to the local market, to our country. So the most part of our wine is sold in Italy, but we are very proud also the fact that our wine is appreciated in 180 countries in the world. We sell our wine mostly in Europe, but US represents our first market outside Europe. And now I would like to leave the floor to Andrea Miotto, that will give you a few tips about why and how Prosecco from Conegliano Valdobbiadene is superior.
Okay, thank you, Giulia. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this presentation of our appellation. So first of all, when we talk about our appellation, as we've seen, we are in the world of Prosecco, but we try to be different. And the difference, of course, it comes from the territory. So we have our vineyard based in a territory that has a natural vocation for viticulture. So we are in the first hills that we find, growing up from the flat in the northern Italy. We just arrived to the Alps, and on the foothills we find our hills. So we have a particular climate which is not as warm as in the flat area. We have a little bit more temperate climate, and also the particular thing is that the extension of our hills goes from east to west, and so it gives the perfect exposure to the sunlight for the vineyards, and of course we have a lot of rainfalls here, but the fact that we have these slope hills helps a lot to drain away the water, and we have a lot of breeze, so the soil and the climate is much interesting for the cultivation of the grapes, of the Glera grapes, especially here. That is the main variety that we have, but not only that one. So yeah, thank you, Julia. Here we can see a little bit of how our hills are just on the foothill of the Alps, and we go from 50 meters above the sea level to 500 meters on the highest vineyard. So we have also an altitude that plays an important role in giving the differences between the appellation. And okay, and of course, as you've seen in the particular kind of hills that we have, very slope and very steep hills, don't allow mechanization in our area. So we say that our wine is a handcrafted wine, because we need to work by hand, all of our vineyards. And the viticulturist has been following the shape of the hills planted in the vineyard and don't changing the characteristic of our territory. This means that we have soils that are still very natural, and but it means that we have a lot of work to do. And we say that usually to grow 1 hectare of vineyard, we need 600 hours of work. And if we compare with a vineyard in the flat, we need about 150 hours in the flat. So it's a lot of difference. And of course, it means that we cannot manage big amounts of vineyards. And in fact, a lot of the vineyards are owned in small pieces of land, and we have over 3,000 growers looking after the vineyards in our area. And then, yeah, here a little bit of manual work. And yeah, let's talk about the grape varieties. We consider our grape 2009. The Glera grape has to be in our wines for a minimum of 85%, and the rest of the 15% of the grape varieties can be between the local varieties. We have Verdiso, Bianchetta, Pereira, and Glera Lunga, or international varieties like Pinot and Chardonnay that can be used only for the sparkling wines. And yeah. And then the production method. So our wine comes, we always say an important thing, that comes after 2 fermentations. So we have the vinification of the grapes, and so we start from the grapes and we make the base wine. So we have the first fermentation to make the still wine that comes for a second fermentation in pressurized tanks, usually the autoclaves with the Charmat method and or Martinotti method. And this makes the classic taste of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene, saving the primary fragrances and aromas and maintaining the freshness of the wine. Even though our wines can be made also in other kind of fermentation, so bottle fermentation, we have classic method, or sparkling wines on the lees. And it's about the styles. So yeah, here is the styles. Of course, working with the Charmat method, we can have different kind of residual sugar on the wines, and we start from the very low residual sugar, so the extra brut, moving up a little bit higher with the sugar level. And of course, it means that the wine have different characteristics, and it's used to be matched with different moments of the day, but with eating or not eating, for example. And then we also have a little bit of production of frizzante wines, so semi-sparkling with lower pressure, and tranquillo, so still wines. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I see a question. Brut is 0 to 12 or 6 to 12. Brut can be called, the brut version comes from 0 to 12, but if we are over 6 grams per liter, we can call it extra brut. So it depends on what the producer wants to do. But usually we can be, with the brut under 12 grams per liter, but we can also be extra brut when we are under 6 grams.
Okay, so after this brief introduction, I think that we can leave the floor to Diego Tomasi and Federica Gagliotti for starting the exploration on the soils of Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
Just a moment, it's correct. Schermo one here is okay.
Yes.
It's perfect.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it. Okay,
thank you very much. So I will just to spend few moments just to go just a little in deep in our environment, in our Conegliano and Valdobbiadene terroir. Andrea told us that Glera is the variety and the Prosecco is the name of the wine. So the first what's happened here? Okay, the first question is when Glera arrived in our hills, and so in our very ancient document, we found that Francesco Maria Malvolti wrote about Prosecco since the beginning of the 18th century. Just here. This, okay, and then we have another professor, Giovanni Nardi, that he remembered in his book that Prosecco was grown, was produced just in the same age, in the same period. So it is already more than 200 years that Prosecco is growing in our area, and but our area, what we mean for our area, what we mean for our yields. Giulia and also Andrea spoke about the river, and so I will try to stress just a little this means, and just to explain you how so much important is a river for us, and so much important is a river for the denomination. So river refers to a very steep slope of vineyards, like this picture. It means that sometimes the steep is more than 70–80%, with a low to medium acreage. So Andrea told us that everything must be done by hand, and so one person or few people cannot grow big surfaces. So it means that for each owner we have maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 square meters. So very small piece of land, very small vineyard. And where it's possible to grow vine, thanks to, there is another fact, Ciglioni. Ciglioni is a very narrow terraces. Here you can see here, less than 1 meter. We can only work here. We can do nothing by machine, and which gives rise to manage the vineyard only by hand. Without this solution, this very brain solution, intelligent solution, it would have not possible to avoid erosion, to make productive these very so steep hills. So there is also one of the reasons, because all this area becomes UNESCO heritage. But what means riva? Riva means south exposition. This is the best exposition to receive the sun along the days. Then this is an example. I took this picture last year, exactly the 11th of January. Here for us is during the winter, but in our river, it is a small vines, has a very small leaves. So it means that the temperature is quite perfect for viticulture, and also during the winter, the temperature don't go below 3, 4, 5 degrees, not like in the flat area where the temperature sometimes go also below the 0 degree. So just to give you an idea, what means a river for us also in terms of temperature and climatic conditions. And then river means all the vineyard, means a low yield, because here the soil has very shallow soil, and then Federica later will explain us what we mean for shallow soils. So there is no vigor, there is no high production, and also because the vineyards are very old, sometimes more than 70–80 years old. like here, this is an example what we mean for shallow soil. Look here, there is the rocky soil is very close to the surface, and also the vineyard are very, very cold, or like here also too. So riva means a beautiful landscape. Our landscape, the best expression of our landscape is exactly in the riva cultivations. Like here, you can see, it's very strange because now olive trees is sharing the landscape with the vineyard because the climate is changing, and since probably 20-25 years ago, the growers start also to plant olive trees, and so now olive and vine there are a very nice combination, and so also our landscape is richest thanks to the olive trees. But riva means also biodiversity. You can see here. The vine share the landscape with other bush and other species, and then also the river means that everything must be done by manual work. Andrea told us 600 hours per hectares, but probably the hectares are not 600 but 800, because you can see you have to cut the grass by hand, we have to spray by hand, of course the harvest is do by hand, so everything must do by hand because the steep is so high that the machine cannot go inside of the vineyard. Or look also here, this other example. So in terms of cost, this is a very recent study from Larissa Straub, and you can see how much cost to manage the riva, to produce our grape in riva. Here, the first price is around 5,000 euro is in the flat plan, but if you go in the riva, in the last one on your right, it's 3 times more. There is the same price for the depreciation of the vineyard, the same price probably for the consumables, but for the manual labor, we spend 12,000 euro per hectare. So this is also the reason because sometimes our wine or the DHG wine costs more than the wine that you can buy in the producing in the flat area. So nowadays we have 43 rive, but probably now we will increase the number of river because we are studying different conditions and different other river, different other hills, and so probably this number will increase. And we know almost everything about river and also about our prosecco. Here, for example, there is the sugar level and the bunch weight, and the year after year, we recorded since 1975 the sugar level and the weight of the bunches. And so we know a lot of things because also here in Conegliano, there is our research center, but there's also the university, and there is also the oldest institute scholar for agriculture. And so we have all the experience about research and so all the experience about different how to manage the data and how to manage the research in our area. So with Federica, we wrote a first book in 2011, writing and reporting our experience from 1995. Then we proposed the same book also in English version in 2013. But last year, 2020, we wrote a complete scientific volume, a scientific book about the river and about our terroir and our landscape. So I think that the Conegliano Valdobbiadene is one of the most studied area in Italy for sure, and maybe also in Europe. For example, we divided our Conegliano Valdobbiadene area in 19 subzones. That means 19 different stories. So each zones, for each zones belongs to temperature, soils, cultivation system, and also here you can see also aroma compound, because Andrea told us that the climate changed from one side to another side, the temperature, the minimum temperature, the maximum temperature, the diurnal range, and so on. So for here you can see that for each of these 19 subzones, Cartizze, Follo, San Vito, we know exactly the aroma compounds so that we can found in the wine and taste during your experience, tasting experience. So the relation between variety, climate, and soil for us means, first of all, also aroma. And there is another new thing. If you go around our landscape, our vineyards, now you can see a lot of this picture, because bees are becoming the sentinels of our environments, because you know that bees is very sensitive to the poison. And so we are trying to demonstrate to the population, to the tourists, to the consumers, that our environment is very healthy. And so this, or also in this other case, you can see a lot of this picture. So we are very proud to have this initiative, to be the first one to try to have as friends bees inside of the vineyard. So,
Professor Tomasi, excuse me, I'm sorry. I think there was a question. There are two questions, if you don't mind. Is that all right?
sorry, is?
There are a few questions.
Yes, if you have a question, please.
Alder, you had two questions, one about the leafing and another.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but I wanted to spend more than a couple seconds looking at those 19 zones map. But my real question was, how common is vineyard leafing in January? You took that photo of January with, like bud break had already happened and there were leaves out there. Is that a very common thing?
Yes, yes. There is a very particularity. I was very surprised to see so small leaves. There was a very young vines, and I don't know why. I don't know why, but anyway, it means that the climate was not severe. The climate was not so cold, and so also probably was a, I don't know. Anyway, I found that these vines, and for me, is a sign of the climate is perfect.
But that is not. It sounds like that is not common,
yeah.
Right? You don't walk into any vineyard. Most vineyards in
No,
January.
no. It was only one. That is the first time in my life that I see. I saw
Okay.
in January that I saw. But anyway, for me, it was a sign of the perfect climate that we can find in the river. Yes, I agree with you. Okay, so I try to give just an overview about our denomination, but unfortunately we don't have time. So I will try to introduce you about the vine that you will taste later. So Julia told me that the vines became from two vintages, the 2019 and 2020. And so I tried to compare the two vintages and try to give you some information about the temperature and about also the rainfall. So starting with the spring in 2019, we have a very, very big amount of rainfall with a low temperature. In fact, we have also a delay in the bloom phase, almost 2 weeks in delay. In 2020, the spring was almost unstable. With you can see also here in the graphs that I put below, the temperature go up and down during the spring, during March and April, and June with a lot of rain. So there is the two characteristics of the 2 years. In both cases, we have a low temperature. In one case, 2019 with a delay in the bloom phases, and in 2020 with June with a lot of rain. You can see here. Summer, 2019, a very hot and dry summer with some problem in water stress. In 2020, last year, we had a very short summer with only two peaks in temperature here and here, reach around 30-32 degrees, but in only 2 moments. We don't have any heat waves. We don't have any problem with the temperature level. And August, the end of August, at the beginning of September, unfortunately, we had a very big amount of rain. It's very unusual for us to have all this amount of rain during August or September, but last year it's happened. So for us, it's important that the month of September, because the real ripening occurred during the September. And so in 2019, we had a very optimal rainy weather conditions, very slow ripening. In fact, we had the harvest at the end of September, probably 10 days later than the usual. This is due to the fact that the bloom phase was very delayed. Then we have an optimal sugar acid balance and with an high aroma compounds level. In 2020, last year, we have a long period, ripening period, to the fact that here, all this rain here, it means also the decreasing in temperature. You can see here, the temperature goes down very fast. We had a very low yield production last year, low sugar, high acidity, but fortunately a very full aroma profile due to the very high diurnal thermal range, due to the fact that the nights were very cool. So, in summarizing, 2019 was an extreme climate variability, and you can see here that the temperature go up and down many times. In 2020, we had no high temperature, very short summer, and no drought conditions. So there are two years quite a difference, but I have another particularity to show you. Here I wrote a very low yield. Why in 2020 we had a very low yield? Because we know that the production, the flower differentiations started 1 year before. So here in May, in the spring, we had a very low temperature. I wrote here low temperature. And so in 2020, we had a very low bud fertility due to the fact that the year before, the temperature in May and June, that is the period when we had the flower differentiation for the next year, the temperature was low and not so perfect for producing the flower. And so 2020 here I wrote that we had a bud fertility due to the climate condition of the previous year spring conditions. So I think that I finished, and so I leave the floor to Federica because he started with the first 3 zones, and then I will finish with the last 2 different zones.
Is it okay to ask another question at this juncture? Do you mind?
And the impact on glare, nothing on drought tolerant grape. No, it's not a tolerant variety, drought tolerant variety. In fact, it is a problem due to the climate change. And we are trying to have more possibility to have irrigation in our vineyard. It's not easy because in the vineyard, in a hillside, it's not easy to have water, but we are trying to study different situation, different solution for this problem. I agree. Unfortunately, Glera needs more or less 600-700 millimeters of water between April and September, and sometimes we can have some problems like the 2019.
There was an earlier question as well, Professor Tomasi, from Mary, having to do with, are you seeing more extremes and disruptions during the growing season?
Sorry, I cannot understand.
Yes, it's are you seeing more extremes and disruptions during the growing season? More, you know,
from 1 year to another year.
Yes.
Yes, the climate change is incredible. Probably until 7-10 years ago, we thought that climate change means just an increase in temperature, but this is not the reason. This is not the truth. The truth is that the climate is unpredictable. For example, we had this year, 2021, we had almost 1 month, all the May, at the beginning of June with rain, a lot of rain. In June, we had 22 days of rain this year. And then suddenly, abruptly, the temperature moves up And now we are having almost 3 weeks with a very high temperature, with no rain. And also yesterday we had a 32 degrees days. For us, it's very unusual in June to have a so high temperature. So the problem of the climate change is not the high temperature, but is the variability inside of the year of the climate condition, the weather condition.
Mm. Thank you.
Very nice spikes of temperature. That seems to be the pattern. Luge.
I meant I hear from a lot of people that increasingly they're seeing an awful lot of very heavy rain in the spring. And then, as you mentioned, then suddenly this very, very hot, unnaturally hot, dry period. So much more extreme than a more normal kind of moderated climate.
Yes, it's not normal for us. Absolutely. We had a lot of problem with disease because, you know, in 1 month you have 22 days of rain. So you cannot go out with a tractor or go in the river to spray the vines. And so we had also some problem with power mildew and down mildew. Unfortunately, in the last 3 weeks, the temperature, the climate, the weather is totally different. And so now probably we lost the 5% of our production due to the disease. But, you know, our growers say, the vintage is finished when the grape is in the cellar. So it's taken another 2 months to finish more probably than 2 months to finish our vintage. So I am sure that the climate change is the worst problem that we are facing now and probably also in the future. And just for the reason that I told you.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing on the words of Professor Tomasi, we are having also very warm springs and with high temperature in spring, and the example on the little flower and the little leaf we had in January is because we are not having very cold winters normally in the last years, and we have a drop down in temperatures at the end of February and May, so we could have the risk of a frost. We are lucky that in working in the hills, we don't have the humidity that in the flats can be found, and so with a higher risk of frost, and we can save our productions in the hills. But also the problem of frost, that was a problem that we didn't have in the past, is becoming a kind of issue because we see this variability in the temperatures quite fast, you know.
Okay.
Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
So finally, I guess we can start the real wine tasting. I don't know if I will start introducing you the areas of the wines you are going to taste, and maybe you can start smelling or tasting your wines, or you can wait at the end of my brief presentation of each area and then taste the wine as you prefer. And after my talk, there is a short talk of Andrea Miotto that will explain the wines of the area. So we start with the first area that is that of the marley soils. These soils are made, as the name says, of marls of clayey origin, and they are characterized by a typical grayish and whitish color, the one that you see in the picture on the slides. And the texture of these soils is very fine, and they are very deep soils and characterized by the total absence of stones in the profile. These soils are typical of the western part of the DOCG, that is the orange area that you see here in the map. And in particular, the first wine we are going to taste comes from the area of Cuya. That is the one where the white dot is placed and is located in the northwest part of the denomination, close to the city of Valdobbiadene. So here are some pictures of the landscape of the Marley area. And as you can see, the landscape here is completely hilly, and it's characterized by quite steep slopes and by a variety of different exposition. Here the altitudes range between 250 and 300 meters above the sea level. And a peculiarity of this area is that the marls that characterize these soils are made of a material very compact and self-supporting. And for this reason, the wine growers do not need to perform invasive soil accommodation in these soils to grow their wines. But the vines are grown on the ciglioni that Diego Tomasi explained before, that are natural narrow terraces on grassy land that are typical of the denomination. This is for the characteristic of the soils have kept the original morphology, and so this area is very typical and characterized by a mixture of curves that make the landscape very particular and suggestive. Looking at the environmental characteristics of this area, the climate here is pretty warmer than in other areas of the denomination, and this is due to two factors. The first is the good exposition of the slopes, and the second is the position that is protected in the north from the wind of the north by the pre-Alps, and in the south by the presence of the Scandolare Molare hills. So in this area, both minimum and maximum temperatures are more or less 1 degree above the average of the denomination. The water here, as you can see in the rain, is abundant, is on the average of the denomination, and the fact that here we have good rainfall and also deep and clay soils make the water availability good during the whole growing season. So here we usually do not have frequent stress condition for the vine. If we look at the grape and then at the wines, as we say, the positive combination of the climate and also the soil condition allow for the production of excellent grape quality, even if here we can reach yields a little bit above the average of the area, about 12.7 kilograms. But always the sugars are on good level, and also, as we say, that the absence of physiological stress for the vine allow the maintenance of good level of acidity in the grapes. That is very important for a sparkling wine like Prosecco. The grapes are rich in all the classes of the typical aromatic compounds of the glera grape, and in particular here we can find the monoterpenes that are responsible for the floral notes. So the good composition of the grapes are reflected also in the sensory characteristic of the wines that we are going to taste. In general, the wine of this area taste soft, they have a delicate body, and also they have a very well-balanced acidity. The aroma is very elegant, and we can perceive floral notes like wildflowers, and also fruity notes, especially peach, apricot, and also green apple. But I leave the word to Andrea to explain better the wines we are tasting now.
Okay, thank you, Federica. Okay, the first wine we are tasting today is Rive di Guia. So Guia is, as we've seen in this particular area in the western side of the appellation. We have this availability of water in the soil, and this conditions that makes the wine to be some of the best parts of the appellation, and to have particular characteristic of freshness and of elegance. So the first one we're tasting is Rive Guia. Guia in this in the Valdobbiadene area is considered probably the area with a little bit more freshness. So it's a little bit in a valley, and with the soils quite deep, that allow the maintaining of a lot of acidity usually. So I'm giving general information on that. And in this wine we're tasting, it's Rive di Guia from La Tordera. This is an extra brut with 0 sugar level. So this is taken to the complete end of the second fermentation. And this comes from a vineyard, and also all of the vineyards in that area are quite old. So we have vines of course not all of the same age, because when a vine dies, it's substituted with a new one. We have not all of the same age, the plants in the vineyard, but we talk about vineyards of about 60 to 70, 50 years old, so quite old vineyards in this area. And so the characteristic of this wine, we have to try to taste it. Yeah, the freshness, the floral notes are responding to the characteristic of this part. White flowers, like acacia, and a little bit of glycine, and also the fruit part is still maintaining freshness. So there's a little bit of apricot, but it's more into green flavors, so like green apple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting for the elegance we find this this wine. Yeah, in the taste, it's the acidity is really present, so we can see a lot the freshness of the wine, considering we don't have any residual sugar. We find this sensation of citrus, and of a lot of freshness, acidity, citric acidity, long lasting in the mouth, and this closure is very long in the closure. It's very vertical, I would say, as a wine, so with a lot of vertical sensation, the acidity, freshness, saltiness. I've been speaking a little bit with the winemaker of this winery, and the particular thing they try to make in this area is to have a little bit of longer ripening in the plants, in order to make the wine to find a little bit of more balance. Because of course, if we don't have any sugar left, any residual sugar in the wine, the acidity, the part of the acidity tries to come out much higher than in a wine with a residual sugar. In this case, we still see the freshness of the wine, but there is a good structure, there is a good volume in the wine. So they try to have a little bit of lower late harvest to have a little bit of more sugar and rise up a little bit in the alcohol level. So to be at about yeah, here we find it's 12 degrees alcohol, this wine. So having a little bit of higher ripening in the vineyard tends to have a little bit of more alcohol. So they can have this roundness and warm sensation given by the alcohol to match a little bit the acidity. And what they try to do is to have a long time on the leaves. So even in the after the first fermentation and then in the second fermentation, between the re-fermentation itself and the moment when the wine is bottled, they say it passed at least 3 or 4 months on the leaves. So this batonnage on the leaves gives a little bit more structure and volume, and try to balance a little bit the acidity and the fresh or the fresh sensation. And also it allows the chance to protect the wine and so stay with a lower level of sulfates. The leaves are antioxidants themselves because the leaves eat all of the oxygen and maintain the wine. So in this case we have and it's written, it's an interesting thing because it's written in the back label. We have a level of sulfates lower than 78 milligrams per liter. So it's very low for a sparkling. And so yeah, it's interesting for me also to try to give long life to this wine, having no sugar and having this freshness and acidity. This might be interesting to taste also in not just right now, but also in a couple of years, to see the evolution of the taste and of the aromas. But I find correspondence on what Federica explained about the area. So this freshness, the acidity is maintained by the soil and by the climate, and the white aromas, so the white flowers and a little bit of a green apple is quite intense in this wine. So a lot of freshness, and then the winemaking technique. Of course, all the wine that we're going to taste are expression of the territory and also expression of the winemaking style of every single producer. But of course, in the case of the river selections, the aim of all the producers is to give word to the soil, to the particular area we are exploring. And so to me, this represents very well the area of Guia and the Valdobbiadene area. And then I would like also to have your opinion and to share a little bit of tasting notes.
I just had a question, Andrea. This natural balance that's listed on the back there, is that something particular to this producer, or is that like a consortium of?
Yeah, Natural Balance is a brand of this producer. So I think it's they try to make all they can to balance the vineyard, the work of the man, and the landscape and the territory. So it's their own brand. It's not something that's about the appellation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrea, would you speak a little bit more in detail about the verticality that you're finding in this wine? I really actually tasted that in a way. It did taste a little bit more like a lift on my palate, not so much front to back, but more bottom of the palate to the top of the palate. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I always, that's when I do a tasting on a wine, I try always to find especially in the mouth and the taste, all of the vertical notes and the fact that give me freshness and so like acidity, saltiness, minerality in the wine, and balance them with the horizontal notes I call, so the warmth of alcohol, the residual sugar, or the glycerin sensation that gives a little bit of smoothness. And this wine is, of course, in my opinion, is more going into the vertical notes. So I feel very well the acidity, which is a characteristic of the area of Guia, of this particular Rive di Guia. Is common to find the acidity, the high acidity in here, but also the minerality, the marly soils is giving the this long sensation in the palate, not only given by the sharpness of acidity, but also from the long lasting taste of the saltiness of this wine. And the closure is the thing that I like in here is that usually when we go very, very low with sugar, a characteristic of Glera grape is to have this sensation of almond, so a little bit of bitterness. In this case, I don't find bitterness. I think the smoothness is giving a well balanced and a very good closure in the wine. So we don't feel that almond sensation, the slightly bitter that usually we can find in a wine that's totally without a residual sugar. Yeah, of course, when I talk about residual sugar, I explained very quickly before the production method. So we have the first fermentation and then the second fermentation in the autoclaves. All of these wines we're tasting today are Martinotti method, so pre-fermented in the autoclave. There is one of these wines I would like to talk about. It's we're going to talk later because they use another particular technique to make it, which makes it different. But if you have any doubt about the production system and not only on the tasting notes, just ask me and we can discuss on that as well.
Okay, if there are no any other questions, I can move to the next wine.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can keep the wines in our glasses and maybe also see the evolution later and discuss later on the different wines.
Yeah, I think the comparative element will be really illustrative for us.
Yeah. So we move now to the area that we call on conglomerates. This area, the soils are characterized by very shallow soils, and these soils are formed over rocks of sedimentary origin. These soils, the ones you see in the pictures, are easily recognizable because the bedrock is often superficial, so you can really see when you go in the vineyards. And the rocks, the parent material is made of stones of different sizes, cemented all together. Where can we find these soils? These soils represent almost 60 to 70% of the soils of the denomination, and we can find them in particular in the steep hills that extend with east-west direction in the northern border of the denomination. The area that on the map you see in green. And the altitude here is variable and is between 150 meters close to the valleys up to 450 meters in the highest hills. The wine that we are tasting from this area in particular comes from the site of Col San Martino, that is located more in the western part of the denomination between the city, close to the city of Vidore and Valdobbiadene. looking at the landscape of this area, the landscape of the conglomerate is really a typical landscape because this is characterized by very, very steep slopes, as you can see in these pictures, but also by the presence of vineyards almost that covers the whole surface of the hills up to the top. You may think that all vineyards may be monotonous for a landscape, but this is not the case because, as you can see, here we have a lot of natural vegetation interspersed in the vineyards, and also we have these occasional rural farmhouses that really enrich the beauty of these hills, of this landscape.
Francesca, can you, before you move on to climate, can you just talk a little bit more about the geologic origins of the conglomerate? How were those soils formed, and where are the cobbles from?
Oh, well, they are the deposits of ancient material, in part produced from a glacial origin, but the characteristic is that of a sedimentary rock, which is originated from the cementation in the centuries of different material from different kind of origins. In other areas, the parental material is different from this part because it has a clear glacial origin. We had an ancient glacier called the Piave Glacier that transported a lot of material during the ages. Part of that material is also present in the sedimentary soils that characterize the conglomerates.
Thank you.
We were talking about the climate and water in this area, and also in this area we have two factors that allow the maintenance of a very high temperature, world temperature during the growing season. And this is the perfect south exposition of these hills, and also the very steep slopes of the hills that increase the sunlight incidence. So this area is really one of the warmest of the denomination. Another characteristic is specific of this area is that here we have a great diurnal thermal range. You see in the table, on average during the growing season is about 11 degrees, but during the ripening period, namely in the months of August and September, we can reach up to 12-13 degrees of thermal shift between day and night. And this is really important for the development of some aromatic compounds that we find in the grapes. Considering the water that you see in the graph on the right, despite here we have a good rainfall that is similar to other areas, about 820 millimeters, we have two factors here. The shallowness of the soils and also the steep slopes that make very difficult to keep a good amount of water in the soil. So this is one of the areas where there might be problems with water stress, especially in the warm and dry season. Looking at the grape and the wines, we say that here we have shallow soils, that means water restriction, and that's why usually in this area we have yield slightly lower than in other areas, about 10 kilograms per vine. But we know that moderate production means also a good quality in the grapes. In fact, here usually we reach very good levels for the sugars. A note must be made about the acidity, because as we said, in some season we can experience water stress. So especially in a dry and hot season, we must really pay attention to the correct date of harvest, because we must avoid the loss of acidity that is very important for our wines. Concerning the grape aromas, the grapes of this area are rich, especially in those compounds like norisoprenoids and monoterpenes that are related to the warmer temperatures. And they are responsible for ripe fruit and tropical fruit notes, but also the monoterpenes for the floral notes. The wines that characterize this area usually have a pronounced olfactory intensity. They have a complex aroma with usually notes of ripe fruit, apple, pear, but also very often tropical notes. But also, as we say, we have a good diurnal thermal range that favors the production of monoterpenes. And due to that, we can also have floral notes and fresh citron notes in these wines. I leave the word to Andrea.
Yeah, thank you, Federica. An important thing before we start tasting this wine is that this is a wine of 2019 vintage. So this is not 2020. We're talking about a different vintage. And so it's 1 year older. I was just trying to see if there is something that's telling me when it's been bottled, but the batch code is not giving other information on the day of bottling. But in this case, we're talking about wine of 2019 vintage. So of course, the complexity I'm expecting to be a little bit bigger in this wine, and the evolution aroma to be a little bit more intense. In fact, in the tasting notes, if we were talking about the first wine with all of these vertical citrus notes, especially of this green apple, here we find more complexity and more ripened aromas, and this is matching very well with the explanation of Federica about the differences we have in the soil. So it's an area where we have higher temperatures and we have more water stress in the area. So in here I found that the vertical notes, this acidity and saltiness is present, but is much more balanced from a more ripening sensation of I like the sensation of yellow apple and pear, and also a slightly tropical, not very intense but very elegant. And just in the first moment, just open the bottle, there was also a little bit of spicy and some evolution. Not to say like the notes of a Riesling, of gasoline or petrol, but there was this slightly note of evolution in the minerality of the wine that was very interesting. I love this spicy sensation as well.
Yeah, I see that. I can note that. Thank you for pointing that out.
And in the mouth, the acidity, the freshness is present, but it's very well balanced. I was looking at the technical sheet in here, and it says that we have about 1.5 grams per liter of sugar, residual sugar. So it's an extra brut with a very, very low amount of sugar. So we find a very high balance without having a lot of sugar, and that is very interesting and very is something that I really appreciate in the wines. I was looking at the technical sheet here as well. It says me that 2019 we are having 11.9 alcohol, so almost 12% alcohol, which is quite high. And this is something that we found also in the first wine. Probably going to a higher ripening, to find also this balance, the warmness to a wine that don't go in the bottle with a high residual sugar. And it's something interesting to give this structure and sensation of warm. And I find this interesting complexity in the nose. It's not probably very explosive in the aromas, but it's very gentle and well balanced.
Andrea, do you know the total acidity on this wine? For some reason, the technical.
No,
Okay.
I didn't find the notes on the acidity on the wine, but probably I expect this wine to have at least 1.5 grams per liter of acidity less than the one from Guia. Also because this is a 2019 vintage where we have a lower acidity level.
No.
And also from the area of origin. Cosamartino, Riva di Cosamartino, we're talking about some of the steepest hills in the area. We're talking about a place where the sun exposure is total, because it's just the first hills that we have facing the border, the southern border of the appellation. So we see the sun all day long. So very high sun exposure, very shallow soil and steep soils. So the ripening is always very high, and it means that the acidity level goes down. So this is a wine that for me has a very good balance to be an extra brut with such a low level of sugar. And I find it very drinkable. And if you have any opinion or just impressions, it's yeah, I see here lots of golden apple. Yeah, I agree, totally agree with that. If I think about comparing the two wines, the first two wines, I would find much more the green apple in the first one and the golden apple in the second one.
Mm-hmm. Or even red apple too. Elaine and I were going back and forth over finding more of a ripe red apple in the nose. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has a more round mouthfeel as well, which I think is probably coming from, you know, you were saying both the fact that it has a year extra on it, as well as the warmer microclimate.
Sorry, I was not hearing very well.
It also has a sort of a rounder, broader mouthfeel.
Yep.
Compared to the verticality of the first wine, which, you know, from what you have said about the area, but also the fact that it's a year older, probably also contributes to that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and I think these two wines represent quite well the origins. And so if the aim of the tasting is to find the characteristic of the Rive and of the geographical area, the specific area, and to find it shown in the bottle, these two are very good examples, in my opinion, in here of the area where they come from. So the freshness of the first one and the rounder sensation, the warmer sensation on the second one. Probably in our area, in the second area, Cosamartino, we can find sometimes a little bit more intensity, probably a little bit more tropical sensation, even more intense ripened aromas. But in the balance and in the elegance, I find it very pointed to the area and to the particular appellation of the Rive di Cosamartino.
Mm. And it looks as if this producer also gets down to the very nitty gritty with respect to parcel numbers on its label. Is that what I'm reading correctly?
Yeah, yeah. Here I see and sorry if I pick the question, is this is a very low, small production, so it's about 5,000 bottles of this wine. So it's very corresponding to small parcels, and try to give all the information necessary on the label to explain what kind of wine it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just reading that all of this wine very easily matchable with food. Yes, of course, the lower we go with the residual sugar, the more it becomes easy to match the wine with food. Not always, but it becomes interesting. I would love to taste both of this wine with some, you know, fish or like a risotto with fish, or maybe also with, you know, fried vegetables, or a little piece of Parmigiano Reggiano, and then they would match very well and clean your mouth, and take with this acidity and freshness, give a lot of opportunity to match with food as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might even go towards, you know, the spice cabinet and see what spices would really complement, not overpower, but be a real interesting partner for the wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's me too. It's almost dinner time here. You're just breakfast time.
Lunchtime here. Lunchtime here in New York.
Great. All right.
Okay, shall I move to the next area?
Sì, per favore.
Okay, so the next one is called clay soils of morainic origin. And the area in particular is the area that we call Rolle, and is the one that you see in dark green on the map. This area is, as the title says, characterized by clay soils that are similar to the marley soil that we saw before, because they have a clay origin, but they have a different origin because they have a morainic only origin. They developed on the glacial deposit of the ancient Pieve Glacier that was surrounding the Valdobbiadene area century ago. So these soils, we can say, merge the characteristic of two of the areas that we are tasting during this wine tasting. The Marley area and the Morainic area that my colleague will explain later. Why they merge these characteristics? Because they are deep clay soils like the Marley soils, but they have they are also rich in skeleton along the soil profile, which is typical of the morainic soils. And this is a characteristic that the marley soil do not have. So this is the difference between marley soils and these typical soils of the Rolle area. And the wine we are tasting comes from the location called Farò, that is in the north, in the northern part of the denomination, and it's close to the city of Cisona di Valmarino. Looking at the landscape, also the landscapes, due to the nature of the soils, is quite similar to the marley soil, because if you see also in this area, you can see hills with very different orientation, with altitudes ranging from 200 to 550 meters above the sea levels, and with steep slopes between 20 and 50%. So here we have a mixture of curves in these hills, but also another typical characteristic that is the age of the vineyards. In fact, most of the vineyards that are cultivated here are very old, between I would say 40, 60 years, but maybe some vineyards are even older. And these make this landscape very suggestive and in a way reminiscent of an ancient wine growing tradition that we can still perceive if we look at these images. And the landscape offers a variety of postcard views, like the ones that you see in the pictures, and the one on your left is the small town of Rolle that you can see is really surrounded by vineyards. We choose another warm area of the DOCG. It's not that we want to present only the warmest one, but in fact, having a warm temperature during the growing season is always a positive factor for the ripening of the grape. So this area is a little bit warmer compared to the average of the DOCG, and this is due again to the good exposition of slopes facing south, but also to the fact that here we are right at the foot of the pre-Alps, so we are really protected from the wind coming from the north. Another characteristic is the water availability, and here we have very good rainfall during the growing season, that together with the fact that we have deep soils and a clay origin in the soils means that the water availability is always on good levels during the growing season. Usually we don't have big problems of water stress. Well, looking at the grapes, what we can say is that despite here we have deep soils with good water retention, we do not have any physiological limitation. The production is a little bit lower than the average of the denomination, and this is due to the fact that the vineyards, most of the vineyards are quite old. So the age of the vineyards is a limit that moderate the production of these vines. And we know that this is a positive factor for the quality of the grape. In fact, both sugar levels and also the acid levels are always on very good levels. The grapes in this area are rich in almost all the classes of aromatic compounds, but especially in the monoterpenes and in norisoprenoids. What we can say is that moderate yields, good water availability, and warm temperatures during the summer months help really a perfect ripening of this grape, both for the sugar acid but also for the aromatic composition of the grapes. The general presentation of the wines of this area, what we can say, the wines are characterized by a good and a well-balanced acidity. The aroma is usually softer, more delicate than the Prosecco from other areas. And the most common notes that we find in these wines are especially the floral notes, but also some fruity notes like those of peach, that can be ascribed by the presence of the monoterpenes and the norisoprenoid compounds in the grapes.
Okay. Okay, Federica, thank you. It's so interesting information about this wine, and I want to add a little bit more information about the production method, because in here there is something that is totally different from all the other wines we are tasting. Okay, well, we are again in 2020, and we are once again in an extra brut with zero sugar, residual sugar. So we are in a bone dry wine, so totally dry. At least this is what is being told by the tech sheet, and also I've been speaking to the owner. The particularity of this wine it comes from the production method. We have said before that when we talk about our wines in the appellation, we talk about two different fermentation. So we talk about vinification, so grapes become juice and juice become wine. So we have the base wine, and then the base wine goes into the second fermentation in the autoclave, adding sugar and adding yeast, of course, and then the second fermentation start, and we get a sparkling wine in the tank, and then it's bottled when it already has the bubbles. In here we have something different because the vinification is done just in the first part. So the grapes are, of course, hand-picked, put in the press. The juice is obtained by pressing softly the grapes, and then the juice goes straight to the autoclave and gets filtered and freeze down at -2, -3 degrees. So the first fermentation doesn't start. This wine stays as a juice for the time they need to take it. You know, the 1, 2, 3, 4 months. It depends on the moment when they decide to let it start the fermentation. And so the fermentation starts from juice straight in the autoclave and becomes sparkling with a single fermentation. So why is that technique used in here? Because the fermentation from juice has the characteristic to give to maintain a lot the primary aromas, so to give more intensity and save a lot the primary aromas of the juice, and so they use this technique to save the identity of the grapes where they come from. Let's
So
do the.
That's super interesting. I haven't heard of a single autoclave fermentation before, and maybe I just missed it when I was visiting the region, but I don't think anybody mentioned that when I was there. In some ways, that makes this almost like I'm sorry to use the term because I'm sure the producers will cringe when I say this, but it's almost like a pet nat, right? Where you're getting the bubbles from the first fermentation. That's quite interesting to me.
Yeah, it's
or a nasty. Or as they do a nasty.
If
Yeah.
you know, like the way they do Moscato d'Asti, so not the Asti Spumante, but Moscato d'Asti is a wine that has a low alcohol level and a high sugar level. So they make from the Moscato grape straight into the autoclaves from the juice, and they make it ferment up to 5 to 6 degrees, and then they stop the fermentation, leaving a lot of residual sugar in the wine. This is something different from that, and this is of course something different from a pet nat, because we make a fermentation in the tank, and of course then the wine is clean. In here we have a parcel that is in an area, as Federica said, is an area quite up north in the appellation we've seen in the map, and also this is a high altitude. We're talking about a vineyard at 300 meters of altitude, so this means that the ripening is very high, and the soil, usually the more we go high in altitude, the lower is the soil profile. So the lower is the amount of soil, explorable soil we have, and the higher is the amount of rocks we have in contact with the roots. In this case, the production method I told you, so chilling the juice and let it start the fermentation after a few months when they need it to make the wine, and they say 5 months on the lees after the fermentation. So trying to give a lot of volume on the wine, standing a long time in the lees. We know also that the longer time the wine spends on the lees, the smaller the bubble becomes. So the more the bubble melts in the wine, and so we have this gentle sensation of smooth smooth bubbles, and small bubbles. So the aromas is quite intense. I think that if the aim was of this technique was the one to save the aromas and maintain the aromas, I think they picked the job, because the aromatic sensation is quite intense. I always feel this sensation of freshness as well. It's not only it's ripened. We have a lot of yellow fruit and pear as well, but I think that the white flowers and also the citric aromas, the citrus is well present.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful wine.
And in the mouth, there is this saltiness and long-lasting sensation in the mouth. So it really covers all the tongue, but also there is a lot of volume. I think that we don't have any residual sugar, but the smoothness. So I feel also this glycerin note. So it's very warm in the mouth. No, it's not only vertical, it gives a lot of roundness and ripeness in the mouth. It's a lot of complexity here, different aromas. As a flower, it reminds me of glycine.
Andrea, what is glycine? I'm not making the.
Sorry, jasmine. Jasmine.
Oh, jasmine. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just thought it might be a rare alpine flower that we wouldn't find very easily. So that's why I was curious.
Sorry, I was thinking of jasmine. Sorry.
No, that's great.
And also like a acacia tree flower.
You know what I was noting, Andrea, and it seems like there's a little bit of synthesis or some agreement on that, but the flowers from basilico, when before it, there's sort of that sort of exotic kind of bit of a spicy / floral note to it, but not too pronounced.
Yeah, kind of Mediterranean, a little bit of on the taste.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, on this flavor.
Yeah.
A good complexity between the aromas of leaves and of vegetal and flowers, and the aromas of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
There is a good ripeness, but standing always on fresh fruit, fruit with good acidity and with good. It's like citrus a little bit. Or grapefruit.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Or I would almost go to the pith of the grapefruit versus the actual flesh of the fruit. Yeah. It seems to be a very wine that people are quite excited about.
Yeah, I think also this wine is gives me the sensation that we said before, an easy wine to match with food, but in the same time it's very balanced and easy to drink by itself, even having a very low or total absent residual sugar. But the smoothness and the balance in the wine and the volume of the wine makes it quite easy to drink by itself. So it's an extra brut, but it reminds me the easy sip of an extra dry. So the smoothness and well balanced roundness in the mouth, and it's a lot of complexity, and this technique probably of the single fermentation from the juice to the sparkling helps to give this sensation. It's something that personally I don't have a lot of experience in that as a winemaker, but I know that the re-fermentation with the juice is giving a lot of the intensity and smoothness and maintaining the freshness of the wine.
I know that Alder has to leave a little bit early, and I believe Diego was going to share a little bit more about the glacier visuals. If we can maybe take a quick minute to do that.
Sure.
Well, I mean, don't do that on my account. Only if
No, I
it's the right
understand.
time.
No, it's okay. It'd be fun to really just get that.
Okay, I can share my screen.
Yep.
Just a moment. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there is the, okay, a very small area, probably only 500 hectares of vineyards belongs to this small area, and it's very particular because it's a real, its origin is a real morainic. It means glacier origin. As you can see here, is very, very small, but here is better to understand the situations. So Federica, before he spoke about a very big glacier. This is the big glacier here, the Piave glaciers. And then we have a small branch here of these big glaciers. So Federica, before he spoke about here as the Rolle is exactly here. And my area now is here. So Federica spoke about a lateral part of this branch of the biggest, that belongs to the biggest glacier, the Piave glaciers. And I am speaking about this part here that is already in the plain, almost in the plain area. And its texture is made by stones, only by stones. Here, okay. This is the biggest glacier. This is the branch, one branch. Federica was speaking about here. Rolle is here, not in the hand of the glacier, but just here. And this is another branch. And I am speaking about this small area. This is a particular area in our denomination. You can see a very big stone. The roots, we have small roots in the upper part of the soil where we have a more organic matter and so on. And then we have the very low here around 1 meter, more than 1 meter. There are the roots that are looking for water. The upper part of the roots they have to absorb the nutrients, and the lowest part of the roots, they have to absorb water. So there is the classic morainic soil in our area. Here you can see the same. And of course, is almost a shallow soil with a very low capacity to retain water, the holding water capacity. And the landscape. The landscape is totally different. We are not in the Valdobbiadene area, but in Conegliano area. There is one small town. Here you can see that the hills are not steep hills. There are very gentle, smooth hills. The altitude range between 80 and 200 meters, not more than 200 meters. Also here, the landscape is beautiful with a very high biodiversity. Also, the trellising system is totally different. Here we have a double arch. It's a sort of double guyot. Here you can see. See also the color, the red color, or the reddish color of the soil, but rich in stone, more biggest and smallest stone. So there is another particularity in this area, that is the diurnal thermal range that is very, very high, because during the night from here, from this part of the mountain, a very cold air every night run off and the interest of all this area here. This is another characteristic. So the characteristics are two. One is the highest diurnal thermal range, and the second one is the soil origin, the morainic soil origin. So just to the fact that we have the soil is very rich in stones. Also, during the summer is very, very seldom we can have some water problem starting the middle of July. Just because I explained you that the soil has not capacity to retain water. So the wine growers are almost obliged to have to have an irrigation system. So the thermal range is from April to October is 11, but in September is more than 13, sometimes also 14 degrees between night and days. Here you have some data about. Okay, as regarding the ripening period, the sugar level is very high, around 19 bricks. And sometimes just the fact that the plant can suffer just a little of water, the acidity sometimes is not so high. We are around 6 or 7 grams per liter of acidity. But just to the very cool night temperature, we have the grape are very rich in benzenoids, I mean spices and fruits notes, and the norisoprenioids, ripe fruits like ananas and exotic fruit and so on. So I hope that you can taste in your glasses the roundness, the intensity, and the persistence of this wine, and then the characteristic by hints of ripe fruit and spices. And I think that it's very easy for an expert, and probably also for you, to confirm the strong local character of this wine. Just for climatic and soil characteristic that are completely different if they are compared with other zones in Valdobbiadene and Conegliano area. And okay, the green apple, but also the ripe fruit, the spices I told you, and this is the characteristics of the wine. You are tasting probably one of the best expression of this wine. The name is here. Belinda is a very small winery, and they are just in the middle, just in the heart of these places. Okay, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you, Diego. Yeah, we are having another expression of the appellation. So we are moving more to the eastern side, and I think that in here we find a lot of different with the other three ones we tasted, especially in the structure and in the volume. First of all, we have been tasting before 3 extra brut wines, so with the residual sugar that was very close to 0, so it was 0 in 2 wines and 1.5 in the other 2 wines. In this case, we're talking about a brut, and we have a residual sugar of about 6 grams per liter. So there is a little bit of residual sugar in this wine, so we have to consider that in the tasting. The first note in the beginning, I have to say, I don't know about you, but I found a little bit of the reduction, so it was a little bit close. Probably it needs to open a little bit more than the other wines that were a little bit more expressive immediately. But I think it's also this characteristic of this yeasty flavor. So there is a lot of yeast flavor, probably just it comes from winemaking technique, probably batonnage or long-lasting contact on the lees. It's something that usually winemakers do to give roundness and strongness, a little bit of power to the wine. So to give this lees contact, but it keeps a little bit the wine closed a little bit. But then, as long as it opens up, I find out all of the aromatic characteristic. I think that here we have the ripe fruit and spices. And I think it's more spicy than the other wines. But then it comes out with this aroma of intense ripe fruit. I think a little bit tropical as well. It's a little pineapple or there's also this pear sensation.
Andrea, have you ever had pineapple when it's been grilled?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you should try it. Try it with you know, a little caramelization that happens, and
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think that the caramelization a little bit it's something that reminds me of this, because there is this note of fruit, but not the integrity of the fruit. I mean, I'm not talking about fruit that is gone, but it's the fruit with, but not just itself. It's with some notes of evolution and of probably this little bit of reduction is giving a little bit of complexity to the aromas as well. And so this yeast contact.
yes.
And then in the mouth, I think there is a lot of volume, a big structure. There is this, it's given probably, yeah, of course, there is a few grams per liter of sugar that's giving some smoothness, but at the same time, there is a lot of volume. The kind of soil in here, this morenic soil and this red clay gives a big structure to the wine, a lot of length to the wine. It closes with a little bit of this almond sensation, almond. It's but not a bitter almond. It's like a sweet almond and gives length to the wine. So the persistence of the wine is interesting. Yep. And then the closure, even if it has this little residual sugar, about 6 grams per liter, the closure is dry, so it open up a little bit wide in the mouth, but the closure in the end is dry. And yeah, like to have your opinions as well in the wine. I think that it's quite easy to understand the difference between this and the other ones, and it's another interpretation of the area and of the soil. It's giving I think we had an interesting range of wines having their own different characteristics.
Yeah, I just had a question. You spoke of it being expressive of the area, sort of a bit more pronounced, you know, and obviously we always have to look at winemaking style and that sort of thing versus just, you know, expression. But I'm curious about just briefly, you know, the area and its pronouncement. It sounds like it within the region it stands out and it's a signature wine.
Yeah. The area of this part of the appellation, as we said before, is such a small area, given by the characteristic of having this morenic soil. Of course, morenic soil gives this minerality and a lot of contact of the roots with stones and with mineral material on the ground. And I think that this intense, especially taste, I think it characterized much more the taste than the aromas. I find a lot of structure and saltiness and minerality and a lot of volume in the mouth.
And Andrea, what about the acidity? Because sometimes this area, the acidity is not so high.
Yeah, the acidity is not sharp here. It's not cutting in the mouth. It's very well balanced. I think that the residual sugar is really well balancing the wine. So I would not have been giving to this wine a higher residual sugar because otherwise it would have been going in through much more, what we said before, horizontal sensation. So it would have been becoming a little bit too wide. Instead, in here we see the good balance between the soft sensation of the residual sugar and the sensation of the structure. And there is this hint of yeast that I find in the nose. Of course, a little bit of closure, and in the mouth. Probably, of course, we're talking about areas, but we're also talking about winemaking techniques and different wineries. So as we said before, we tasted wines that had different production system, but they represented very well the areas. In this case, of course, we have another example of interpretation of the area, giving expression to the particular area, but in the same time giving expression to the winemaking technique, probably giving a little bit of a personality and the ease contact and a little bit more austerity to the wine, was also on the aim of the producer.
Got it. I know that we're over time, and there's so much more we could talk about. I know we have the Cartizze, and we do not want to give the crown jewel short shrift on the timing. So if you don't mind, could we move to that? Thank you.
Yes, okay. There is the last part of your experience, the last part of your path. And there is the Cartizze area. You are on the top of the quality pyramid, the peak of the pyramid, with this small area, only 116 hectares. And the peculiarity is it's a calcareous soil. And okay, it's a calcareous, and sometimes it's very easy to find also shells in the soil, in the rocks of this soil, because it means that also in this case, all this area one time was a lagoon, was an ocean, and then lagoon, and then hills, and this is the landscape. There are also in this case a very steep slope vineyard. There are very old vineyard. The landscape is also very rich in these small houses where one time the people lives inside. Also, this is another picture. Here, this is the lowest part of Cartizze. The altitude is more or less ranged between the 35 and the 400 meters. Here too. Here, so the landscape is one of the best places here. Also, the trellising system is not a real classic trellising. Is probably at the beginning it was a double arch, but now due to the fact that the vineyards are very, very old, also in this case the vineyard is more than 50 years old. Also the trellising is a little confused. It's not a real double arch. Just also because the vine growers start to use all the space of the soil that it has, and so the vine sometimes has a very strange form. And here we dug our hole to study the soil and to study also the roots. Also in this case, the color means that the soil is very calcareous. This is the roots. We have not too much roots, but we have a very thick roots because the soil is very rich in clay, and so the roots have to go down until 1 meter and more than 1 meter just to look for water. And so it's a completely different world compared to the before one in morenic soil. Here we have a very small, very few roots, but very, very thick roots that go down and down to look for water. And also here we have roots more than 1 meter deep. Here you can see is the same. So for us, we try to combine roots, the distribution, and the density of the roots, and the characteristics of the soil. Always it's happened that due to the texture, due to the origin of the soil, also the roots are different. The roots belongs to the texture and the origin of the soil. Okay, regarding the water, the quantity of the water is just in the middle, just in the average of all the zones. We do not have a problem with the water. Just during the summer, of course, we have less water, but the plant never suffer for water stress. Here is another characteristics. In the previous area, I told you that the diurnal temp range was very high. In this case, the thermal range is very low. 8.6, it means that in September the level is around 10 degrees, so not so much. And why the temperature during the night doesn't go so down? Because during the day we do not have a very high temperature. Because in these places during the day there is a flow, the wind flow that comes from east to west, and so it's keep the temperature not very low, but anyway lower than another place. And so if during the day we do not have a so high temperature, it means also that the lunar thermal range is not so high. So the minimum temperature is around 14, the maximum temperature is only 23. There is a peculiarity of this area. So during the day, the temperature is not in a high level. The soil is very calcareous soil. The diurnal thermal range is very, very low. There are no hydric stress. And so also, you can see also the ripening period, at the end of the ripening period, the sugar is not so high level in sugar. You can see that there are no differences between the different vintages. Year after year, the grape reach almost the same level of sugar and not more or not less. The acidity is perfect, 8-9 gram-liters in acidity, and also in this case you can see that all these curves finish at the same level. It means that there is a perfect area for grape. As regards the grape aromas, here the aromas, we have more monoterpenes compared with the average, more norisoprenolics and more benzenoids. So we have a lot of norisoprenolics, it means ripe fruit, monoterpenes, floral notes. Sometimes you are not able to taste the green apple. It is a little strange. So green apple are not present like in the other area, but here we have an explosion of aroma. In fact, we have floral, rose, tropical, pear. This is also the reason because this is probably the most famous area in our denomination. So in the wines, you should, I hope that you should taste a pear, peach, apricot, white flower, tropical fruit, but anyway, a very complexity. I think that Andrea will explain you that in this case we are tasting a wine with a high level of sugar, because in our tradition we use Cartizze wine for dessert. At the end of our meal or dinner, we use Cartizze for dessert. Anyway, in this picture I try to summarize the Cartizze area. For course, constant high aromatic level, but you can see that the rocks is calcareous rocks. The vine is very, very old vines with no real trellising system. The pots are by wood, and so everything speaks you about the tradition, speaking you about a very terroir wines. And I hope that you confirm my words in the glasses.
Thank you, Diego. Yeah, if you wanted the intensity, yeah, here you have the glass of Cartizze. So an explosion of flowers and of flavors, a lot of tropical, a lot of I think this banana sensation in the beginning, and then going with the I would say fruit salad. So this sensation of complexity, fruity and intense aromas. So Cartizze is in the peak of our quality pyramid in the appellation. So we're talking about a very small area where everybody is trying to take out the best from the vineyard. So trying to grow the best grapes, and in the same way the producers try to give the best expression from those grapes to show to people what our appellation can do. I think in here we can find a great example of about 2020. So representing the vintage, representing the area, so with the intensity, with the elegance, as Professor Tomasi explained, because of the characteristic of the soil, but also because of how the people has been managing the vineyards and managing the winemaking and trying to give their best on the winemaking here. So saving all the aromas in here, all the small different phases of the aromatic characteristic of our variety. Usually we have old vineyards in this area. So the older the vineyard, the higher the complexity. We are always talking about a brut in here, which is quite uncommon because as Diego Tomasi said before, usually the Cartice is in the 90% of the cases is presented in the dry version. So with about 20-25 grams per liter of sugar. Here we have a brut. Of course, this is in the higher part of the brut level. So we're about 10 to 12 grams per liter of residual sugar. So it's quite smooth in the mouth, and the sugar has the characteristic also of helping the wine to show out the aromas, because all the pre-aromas we have, when they join with the sugar in the vinification, they give up a lot of different aromas. In here, the residual sugar is not intended only also to give the intensity of the aromas, but to balance the freshness and the structure of this wine. I think that what is quite impressive is that it seems a fresh, skinny wine, but in the end, you can feel the power and also the structure of this area, the kind of soil, the deepness of the roots that can explore this kind of soil, gives the wines from the Cartice area always having an intense saltiness, a big intensity just on the taste. And here is well balanced in the freshness, balanced with the residual sugar. But probably here the aromatic intensity is what really hits in the glass. Yeah, we have done a journey going from the western side of the appellation, going east, and then coming back to the top of the appellation as the Cartice. And
Yes.
I would like to have some of your impressions, maybe just to share some impressions on the wine.
Thank you so much. Yes. Any impressions on the Cartice anyone would like to share as we wrap up?
I would say that you tasted only five subzones. You experienced it just for a small part of the domination. I think that Giulia will invite you to come here and to know the other 14 different subzones and the other 14 histories that we try to summarize in our book with Federica. But okay, probably you test not the best, but just 5 stories today, not the best.
Well, thank you.
Another 14 how you say capitoli in the book.
Chapters.
Part of another 14 parts of the book. Yes.
Yes, as Mary said in the chat, Diego, she said that we could spend a whole day on this topic, and I don't disagree, and I would be very much alert and happy to be there the whole time. So thank you for imparting.
Thank you for attention and for patience.
Absolutely, and thank you for opening the door to, I think, a world of knowledge that all of us will pursue further. And I look forward to perhaps part 2 of this at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining this masterclass. Susan Gordon will come to visit us in a week, and I hope that we could welcome you all in the next month as soon as possible to organize a big tasting and a nice tour of the appellation and exploring even more in deep the beautiful world of Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
Julia, and also to eating something, not of
Also, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are all hungry talking about pairings. So.
Oh, I think that
Bye.
the important thing is
Thank you very much.
Bye.
So Diego, we have some expressions of different terroirs, and at the same time we have expression of different winemaking, and this makes our area an area that's always developing and researching. And we have the research in the of course in the territory, as we said, with the book of Federica and Diego Tomasi, we have research in the winemaking. We always try to improve and to try to give the best expressions of the areas. The Rive is something that helps the producers to try to give a picture of smaller areas, because Conegliano Valdobbiadene is not a big area, it's a small area, but has a lot of complexity inside that we can try to develop and to explain and to give different faces of the same appellation, but very different one each other, and to try to go deeper. We can stay on the surface, or we can go deeper and deeper and find always different sensation, taste, and producers in all the appellations. So thank you for your time here. If you have any other question, or you can just write, and we will try to reply or get back to all your focus on this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Grazie
Thank
mille.
you.
And
Thank you very much.
yes, thank you. I will send a recording to everyone, and please follow up with any questions. We're here for you. Grazie mille.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Grazie,
Ciao.
grazie.
Bye. Bye.
Julia.
Grazie.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Ray.